Let me just check to make sure everything is working. Yeah, it looks like everything is good. Today we're going to talk about, well, we're going to get to it eventually, but I have three videos pulled up. Two of them are pretty short, so we'll go through those ones first. They were just videos I found, and I watched one of them today and I enjoyed it, but the other one's just Robert Greene suggesting books, which I think he gives good suggestions. That's really one thing you can never fault Robert Greene for is giving good suggestions, giving people interesting ideas to kind of pull the thread on. I feel like I owe a lot of the things I know simply to the fact that I didn't know where to look. I picked up his books and was led in interesting directions. Even if I don't know, I don't know if I'd read any of his works anymore. I don't think I would really find that much out of him. I probably would rather just go to the source, but definitely served a good purpose in forcing me to research and learn about things that I didn't even know where to begin.
To the top is paved
This is the Grim, great channel, by the way. I love this guy.
with very specific books. First, you reclaim your free mind and free psyche. Read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
I think this is one of like the best blanket suggestions for philosophy. I think it's one of the simplest and the most bang for your buck because, really what it is it's understanding that there's not too many highs, or not to get too high, not to get too low. And living your life with that idea that this too shall pass, living your life with the idea that, you have to face things and you have to be as strong as you possibly can. You can't allow the outside world to affect the inside world.
Second, receive
The only reason I don't talk about it that much is because I find it lacks like the same spirit Taoism would have, or the same spirit like an Emerson would have. Like I find them very similar in certain ways, but to me it's just I love the poetry aspect of Emerson. I love the poetry aspect of the Tao Te Ching.
good health and exit the poisonous system you are surrounded with. Read The Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles.
Okay, so I've never read this book. I have read The Science of Getting Rich, which is not even it's not like Think and Grow Rich. I guess it is in a kind of way, but it really taught me a few things that I incorporate in my life to this day, and it's don't compete, you have to create. And what I mean by that is if you compete, you are in competition with the rest of the world because the rest of the world is taking actions in a set way. They're doing things as they were told to do, and only a handful of people will be remarkable that way. And usually it's luck, usually it's where you were born and all sorts of things like that. And it's very difficult to work your way to the top in that way. But what if you just worked smarter, not harder? What if you thought your way to success? What if you came up with an idea that transformed things? What if you were able to create the competitor that will end up destroying the company you want to work for? You know what I mean? It's like we so oftentimes like to follow the path that's been laid out for us, but as Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So why do we do that with our lives? Why do we do what everyone else is doing except expect that that's going to bring us happiness? Where you look around and most people, maybe they're comfortable, maybe they have some aspects of their lives that they like, but do they really do the vast majority of people really wake up and say, I'm so happy I was able to get out of bed? And that's really what I'm talking about. But Wallace D. Wattles is like a new age thought movement. Think like Bob Proctor or Napoleon Hill or kind of law of attraction kind of people. Really, really inspired by Emerson. All of these guys, but they kind of steered out and directed in the more like self-help manifestation way of things.
3.
But I do enjoy Wallace D. Wallace. I really like the what is this book called again? I literally just had it. I'm like my brain's not working. Science of Getting Rich. That's a really good book. It's about 50 pages. One of It's one of the first books that I read when I got back into reading. I don't remember where I found it, but it's very good.
Live humbly so you can become a producer, not a consumer. Read Walden by Henry David Thoreau.
Again, one of the best books you can ever read, especially in the society we live in today. You know, it's never been more consumer driven. It's never been more you must like this slop and like the next slop that's coming to you. And when you can kind of break yourself out of that cycle, you can kind of gain back your sovereignty. You can gain back your attention. You can gain back your time. And your life is no longer directed onto the accumulation of things. It's directed onto the betterment of yourself, the finding of your soul, the finding of what makes life.
Then you find good people around you. Read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. After that,
I think that book's vastly overrated, but it is very helpful. Um, there's a lot of channels that will tell you like that's the most important book to read. I certainly think if you're very socially awkward, it could really benefit you a lot. Um, but it's just like basic stuff. It's like when you say somebody's name, it's their favorite word in the dictionary. So the more you say their name, the more they're going to associate good feelings with you. Or, never argue because when you argue, then you create an enemy. And if you created an enemy, then in the future they're going to try to tear you down. Never insult somebody or, really, really refrain from trying to insult somebody because there's better ways to tell somebody how to do something. There's been plenty of times where I've been like working on something and somebody that's above me or somebody that's older than me, like instead of telling them what they're doing is wrong or weird or why are you doing it this way, like I'm like, oh, it's interesting. I didn't know you could do it that way. This is the way I do it, and you show them the way you did it and the way that's faster and the way that's better, and they don't even know that you're teaching them another way to do it. It's kind of like putting it in their face and then allowing them to accept it or not accept it, and it's that idea that you can't help people that don't want to be helped. It's that sort of thing. But there's all types of ideas in that book that you might find useful if you are a little more socially awkward, but I don't necessarily think it's going to help you find great friends because it really just serves you in terms of like playing the political game, playing the strategic game, not being confrontational and not acting in certain ways that other people might succumb to when their emotions are when they lose control of their emotions.
you form a company with those excellent people. Read The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Again, it's another one of those books that like it's good, but like it doesn't make you a strategic genius if you read it. I think two or three times, and like it's okay. It's very short, somewhat philosophical. Um, some of the phrases can be used in application to life, but it's not the way I live my life. So I see somebody putting it as an important book, but I don't rank it super strong.
Then you make money and invest it wisely. Read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This is one of the worst, like worser books I've read on law of assumption, law of attraction. Um, I would recommend Psychosynthetics or Reality Transurfing or Neville Goddard, Power of Awareness, something like that. I don't think like Napoleon Hill, obviously, like he had a system, but like he didn't. It's the thing is like, how did you make your money? Oh well, I sold a bunch of books, like that kind of thing. Like whereas the other people, they were kind of successful in other endeavors. I whenever you see like a manifestation person that only makes their money through manifestation, like just rubs me the wrong way. If you're really so good at using your mind to create wealth, then why are you asking other people for money? Shouldn't you just be able to pull it from thin air? But
Then you
interesting book.
understand how to.
I think Outwitting the Devil is a much better book. I think that's much more interesting because it kind of goes into the psychology of why so many people lose focus, why so many people aren't where they want to be, and the common pitfalls that we succumb to versus Think and Grow Rich is kind of just one of those books that you read and you're like, oh, that's cool. Like I my thoughts can in some way direct me to a better future. And it's like I think it kind of gets over the important aspect, which is you can change the aspects of yourself right now. You can start thinking in a different way to direct your life in a way that you would enjoy. Because money's not gonna make you happy. That's the thing though. Those kind of books don't tell you is that maybe it can solve some of your problems, but it won't make you content. It won't bring you the satisfaction that you need for the rest of your life. It will just bring you a new set of problems because if you haven't fixed the old ones, then the money will just multiply them. Your vices will come out even stronger because you have access to them at a greater level and such things.
Find yourself a good woman, and you found a good family. Read War and Peace by Lev
This is a book I have to read. I haven't read this one yet.
Tolstoy. And after that, you learn the truth about the Suki system and teach your family not to be slaves. Read Modern Money Mechanics by the Federal Reserve Bank.
I have not read this one either, but a lot of these things you can just think about. Like if I were to read this book, I'd pick up one of the things that like I probably already know. And that's why I don't really read nonfiction, because you can kind of just like look up an article and figure the rest out. I'm not like a detail person. Like I don't need to know the history, the dates, the facts, and all that sort of stuff to understand how something works and how something operates. Like just broadly define the system and I can figure it out. So, but if you want to read this, I mean, the system of money is just when you really think about it, it makes absolutely no sense, and it doesn't make any sense why anybody puts up with it. But it is what it is. It's kind of collective gambling that we all agree to, and
Of Chicago.
scares me the more I think
But
about it.
don't forget to keep the beauty and poetry in your life. Read Leaves of Grass by
I started reading this, I got like 50 pages in. Not that I didn't like it, it's just you know when you read something and you're like, I see where this thing is going. I see why people enjoy this play. Like, for whatever reason, it's not resonating right now. That's how I felt with it. But essentially, it's Whitman traveling across the United States, or I don't even know if he's traveling across the United States. He's just going to different places and going to different scenery and observing everything and anything and defining the collective spirit of America, but more more so everything as a whole and kind of the beauty of the human spirit. It's it's good. There's definitely quotes in it that certainly stuck out to me. Like I of course I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. Why should I not? And it's kind of just Whitman saying like, yeah, I contradict myself. What are you gonna do about it? I'm human, and that's seemingly one of the more brave things to do because most people have a set ideology. Most people have a set system, and systems create the need for consistency. Systems create the need to put everything in a tight box. But Whitman's talking more to the nature of reality and the true nature of things.
Walt Whitman.
Very well
Then
put.
build a fraternity to bring honor to this world. Read Bushido, The Soul of Japan
I have not read
by
this.
Inatsune. As you grow older, dive deeper into faith and God. Read The Dark Night of the Soul.
I immediately added this to my card. I've heard of Saint John of the Cross before. I've heard he's like a mystic, almost like William Blake. Anytime you put William Blake around somebody's name, I'm going to go pick them up because it's just my favorite writer. But
By John of the Cross, you learn how to forgive, to set your soul free, and then die without regrets and die with honor. On your deathbed, your brothers will read for you. On the Shortness of Life by Seneca.
I have
These
not read
are the
this.
12 books of your life.
The only thing I read by Seneca was Letters from a Stoic, which I enjoyed, but I didn't pick up on the shortness of life. Seneca's an interesting figure, though. think he was an advisor to Nero, and then he got taken out because Nero somewhat blamed him for a plot on his life, and he decided to drink poison and did it willingly and did it without fear because it's almost in his dying moments he didn't want anyone else to have control of him, and it was like seen as like a very heroic death in the Stoic world.
cultures to African literature, to Egyptian literature, Chinese literature, to ancient literature will get you to think in different ways. So if somebody wanted to know what other books that I would recommend for somebody in their late teens and early 20s, everything depends on your individual spirit, whether you're a man or a woman or wherever you are, your background, etc. So it's hard to generalize. But there are a few books. I
That's
think
good.
one that's
No,
very
it is fine. Light was just bothering me. So I think Robert Greene is pretty good at picking out sort of collector struggles. I mean, that's really what the 48 Laws of Power is. He was pinpointing 48 things that he found in society that he saw recurring throughout history and recurring throughout different facets of life. But really, his book suggestions and the people that he always references, I love to go back and look at the names that he references and see that I've like actually gone in and studied them myself. Like not even on purpose, but like I don't know, like he's really good at like getting your foot in the door, getting you to kind of look at things that you otherwise wouldn't look at. Dude, this is weird. I know what book this is. It's an Alan Watts book.
very good is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor.
One of the best books that you can ever pick up. Talking about the undying human spirit. There's a quote. Viktor Frankl quotes Nietzsche, and he says, "Give a man a why, and he can bear almost any how." And really, what that means is why are you doing something? Why are you enduring this pain? Why are you enduring this hardship? What is the light at the end of the tunnel? And if you don't have an answer for that, then you can't really deal with things. But if you do, then you're going to be able to bear pretty much any means.
Frankl. It's kind of like what I've talked about before about finding meaning and purpose in your life. It's a beautifully told story. It's somebody who survived life in a concentration camp. He became a therapist. You form a therapy called logotherapy, which is all about how you develop a sense of purpose in your life. What does it mean to be alive?
The whole system of therapy is based around meaning. So the first thing to do is to find meaning because if you can find meaning, then you can find everything else for.
He discovered that in the concentration camps, the people who managed to live through it all and come out of it relatively unscathed were those who had a deep sense of purpose when they entered it. And so from that, he developed a very beautiful philosophy. And it's a very beautiful book, and I highly recommend it. Another book is something that I've just read recently for a chapter that I'm writing for my new book, but I think would be very helpful for people. If I had read it when I was younger, I would have really loved it. It's called The Soul's Code by Hillman. And basically,
Never heard of this book before. So weird how it's a New York Times bestseller and I've never heard of it.
he's
There's so
kind
many
of
books out
showing
there.
a bunch of stories of people, kind of like how I like to write, but he's a very brilliant man. Stories of people who discovered what I call their life's task by seeing the kind of seed that made them who they are, their uniqueness. And he describes in depth these stories and what lies behind it, and how we have to change how we look at ourselves and our potential. He wants to get out of this idea that it's your parents that determined everything about you in your life. He says, no, you often determine what happens to your parents.
This is an idea that I try to reiterate as much as possible is that maybe there is some hand that's directing your life in a certain direction, but that doesn't mean that you don't also have some pull over it. And until we realize that in every moment we can in some way affect our decisions, then we can't really do anything about our lives. But the moment that you start taking a little bit of, well, this awful thing happened, but you know what, I could have been a little bit better here. I got really unlucky, but that doesn't mean that I really shouldn't have worked a little bit harder onto this thing and maybe I would have done better next time. Like that sort of way of thinking. And obviously there's extremes. I don't believe in absolutes, so
You have the
just take it
seed
with a grain of
within
salt.
you of changing the world, of changing your circumstances. And so I highly recommend this book for anybody in their early 20s who's trying to figure out their purpose in life, right? And
They
so
say
that
it's
would be a
called
book. I've talked about this
The Soul's
before,
Code.
the book by Howard Gardner. It's not a poetic book. It's not like Frankl or Hillman, who are beautiful writers. He's kind of a dry writer, but he sort of shows this idea of finding your purpose through the different kind of intelligence that you possess naturally. And reading that book would really kind of help you.
When we talk about intelligence, most people think it's like, oh, what fun facts can you recite? But there's like practical intelligence where like can take apart a machine. There's creative intelligence where people can make great masterpieces. There's obviously scientific intelligence. There's people that are very well with dealing with other people. You see it like think, have you ever met a salesman? Like, you know they're selling you something, but you can't help but buy it. There's different characteristics that we all kind of excel in, and I don't like this idea that like because you failed at one aspect of life that makes you bad at the others. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't learn to be good at anything because I wasn't good at learning in school. I wasn't good at learning in school, and I've learned a whole lot of things just in the past 2, 3 years. It's a marvel to me, like how much I really transformed my entire personality just by setting my mind to, setting aside a little bit of time every day to read, setting aside a little bit of time every day to learn and expand upon the ideas that I already understand and to begin expressing them and what kind of synthesis that ties together in between somewhat opposite ideas and really what comes
Focus on what that could possibly be. I also recommend things that kind of enrich your soul, that take you out of the day-to-day world, that kind of show you the wider world, etc. So I'm a great believer in reading books about the ancient world. So that would be a particular.
I think when you read like classic works, Dostoevsky or stuff like that, like older works, or even if you go further back, Plato, or I said Plato instead of Plato, or like the Odyssey or the Iliad, like you go back and read those things and you see that these people are dealing with the same things you dealt with, and it kind of puts things into perspective. It kind of teaches you about the human experience and kind of tells you that these problems are somewhat eternal, but we're somewhat limited. So to put so much effort and attention into these things where we can just enjoy existence, it's really counter to what we should be.
Culture that you're attracted to. For me, it's ancient Greece, so it's like the history of the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides, or it could be the Gallic Wars by Julius Caesar, or it could be any of the dialogues of Plato. But I love.
If you're going to read any dialogue of Plato, read Plato's Apology. It's about I want to say 20 pages long, and it's about the death of Socrates. The most interesting philosophy I've ever read.
Love getting into that other way of thinking, because the problem that you have today is everybody thinks the same. We're all kind of reflections of algorithms. Our minds just go in these circles. Exposing yourself to different cultures as well, to African literature, to Egyptian literature, China.
There's like so many books that I never thought I would enjoy. Like people, I want to say a year and a half ago, were like, "You should read Lovecraft," and I'm like, I don't really care about that kind. And I pick up a Lovecraft story and I see like, oh, this is very similar to Kafka. Oh, this has like hints of occult or esoteric ideas in this. Like it was all the stuff I'd be interested in, but I was turned off to it because it's in the genre of horror and I don't like horror movies. You know what I mean? It's like we close ourselves off to ideas that we would probably find something in. You don't even have to like it. You could just find a perspective in it. You could say, you know what? Now I have an appreciation for people that enjoy this because this is a lot different than I thought it was. This is, maybe it's not my thing, but it's more interesting than I gave it credit for.
Chinese literature to ancient literature will get you to think in different ways. So I'm a big believer in that. And in that sense, I'd like you to choose your own path. But I want you to, when you're young, to be focusing on writers who will expand your way of thinking and challenge you. People like a Friedrich Nietzsche, and there are many others. But those
He always talks about Nietzsche. Um, and what he said there was important. Find people that challenge you. It's not enough to find people that your beliefs. It's not enough to find people that, you know, you read and you completely agree with everything they say. You have to also go out and seek the opposite side. You have to go out and seek the other perspective because, maybe you don't like their argument. Maybe you don't um enjoy their perspective, but at least you know where they're coming from. At least you know a little bit more about your own argument because, to really know your argument like the back of your hand, you also need to know its shortcomings. You also need to know where it falls short and where better to go than the critic of that idea. All right, we're gonna get into Alan Watts. Oh, this is flying by. 25 minutes already. I just wanted to check how long it would take because that video was 4 minutes and the video before that was three. And we're 25 minutes in. I certainly don't have a problem about fair use. That's for sure.
Well, I have a sort of suggestion, and that
This is Alan Watts, by the way. I don't know if we reacted to this one specifically. He has a bunch with Alan Watts, but again, you've seen one Alan Watts video, you've seen them all, but that still doesn't stop me from going back to listen to them again because there's one, his voice is tremendous. One, he has one of those voices where the words he says carry so much more weight because there's an inflection, there's something in that tone that tells you this is a man that went to all ends of the earth to figure out what it was and he's trying to share it with you. You're like the biggest Alan Watts fan. Have you read all his books? I feel like I've read like three or four. I really enjoy him. I really do. I think he's. I mean, like one time I was like watching a video, it was like a short or something, and people were like, "Oh, he was just repeating other people's ideas." It's like, who cares? Like, he's trying to teach people about Eastern mysticism and like did a very good job of explaining it in very simple terms. Like, if you're new to any sort of Eastern ideology, go to Alan Watts because he's gonna explain it the best to the Western mind. There's very few people that are like as interesting as.
is this, that before we decide either to save the planet or to destroy it, we pause for a moment of silence. I don't mean that kind of grim silence which one observes when somebody says, such and such a famous person has just died, and we'll observe a moment of silence in his honor. And everybody frowns and thinks very serious thoughts. That's not silence at all. I mean real silence.
Who I yelled at too. He was a Zen Buddhist, so this is the way I understand it. There's a phrase. Actually, there's two phrases. One is eat when you're. I was about to say eat when you're tired. Eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. And the other one is if you see Buddha on the road, kill him. Meaning like there's no one path to enlightenment. There's no one existence that will lead you to what you're looking for. It's an individual one. And really to break away from all idols, really to break away from any preconceived notion about things. You literally go through life with what he teaches. Even today, I listen to his lectures all day. I, I feel like he's pretty well known. Is he not? I mean, maybe he's like, again, people are so consumed in like their own world and their own bubble where like they don't even know like anything about anything and they probably couldn't name what's that one kid Matani's like name 10 books like there's a lot of people that probably couldn't name 10 books but I feel like there's enough videos of him around. I feel like he's one of the more popular spiritual figures online. I get suggested his videos all the time. I don't always listen to him, but I see him everywhere. Maybe that's just me though.
In which we stop thinking and experience reality as reality is. Because after all, if I talk all the time, I can't hear what anyone else has to say. And if I think all the time, and by that I mean specifically talking to yourself subvocally inside your skull, if I think all the time, I have nothing to think about except thoughts.
This is an idea that Seneca, I think, said the best. We suffer more in our own minds than we do in reality. That's what he's thinking about. People thinking about thoughts. Think about when something bad happens. What do you begin to do? You begin to go into the worst case scenario. You begin to go through your mind and play out the absolute worst possible thing that could ever happen to you. And you're thinking about something that's not even real. You're thinking about something that's completely fabricated by your own mind, and you're literally stressing out about stressing yourself out. It's when you think about it that way, it's the funniest thing because you're like, I'm getting myself all worked up for nothing. Like literally, I could just put my mind to anything else, but I'm stuck here driving myself crazy. What's up, Lorival? I hope I said that right. Let me know how to say that. I'm doing pretty good. How are you? Is it Lorival or just tell me how to say it. I'm so bad with reading names.
And so I'm never in touch with the real world. Now, what is the real world? Some people have the theory that the real world is material or physical. I say it's made of kind of a stuff. Other people have the theory that the real world is spiritual or mental. But I want you to point out that both those theories of the world are concepts. They are constructions
I thought he was going to say both of them are correct, but
of
that goes a
words.
different way.
And the real world is not an idea. It is not words. Reality is...
I pronounced it right? Okay, good. What I find so interesting about this is like there's some lost meaning in everything. And this I was reading I would say Borges. It's Borges. I think that's how you say it. Somebody told me how to say it today, and I'm really struggling. Borges. But he was writing and he said there's something to language that's always metaphysical because you're defining concepts that are beyond definition, and there's always something lost in translation. There's always some phrase that exists in one society. It's a simple expression, but it doesn't exist in another. And I found that to be extremely fascinating. Maybe that was Gurdjieff. I can't remember. I think both of them said it honestly, but I've been stuck on that idea for like the last day or two that I've just been I've been thinking about all the time. Just moved.
You will find, therefore,
I love how he left the silence in there too.
that if you get with reality, all sorts of illusions disappear.
Think about it this way. Have you ever changed your perspective a lot on something? And the old way you look at the world, you almost look back on it and you're like, who was that? It's because the world is completely different now. It's because the way you perceive things is so diametrically opposed to what it once was. And it's as if you birthed a new person because you did in a certain sense. But that's really what he's talking about. Is when we get closer to real existence, real life, when we stop getting into these loops of I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, and simply just, live your life and do the things that you want to do. When you start simplifying things, then you start seeing a whole new perspective on things. When I started understanding this, I think it really, I think Eastern philosophy is like the biggest change that ever happened in my life because, I already stopped caring for the most part what people thought about me, but I didn't know what to do with it. Whereas Eastern mysticism kind of guides you to the idea that like it's the simplicity you want. It's the effortless action. It's wu wei. It's doing things not for the result, for the sake of doing them. You know, why am I streaming? Do I care that there's not thousands of people in here? I mean, maybe somewhere deep down, but on the face, I'm just having fun. On the face, I'm just enjoying, you know, an activity, a hobby that I love doing, and you know, it's fun to talk about the things that I learn about. It's fun to try to explain them and tie them back and try to make other people interested in the things I'm interested in. Like it's fun to me. Maybe it doesn't seem fun to you, but it's what I enjoy doing.
And I will mention several illusions that have not this kind of existence. Let's begin with some very down-to-earth ones, like money. Money is a very useful method of accounting. It is a measure of wealth in the same way as inches are measures of length and grams measures of weight. You cannot eat money. You could have a fantastic quantity of dollar bills and stock.
The Weimar Republic when the after World War One, where they crashed it, people were bringing wheelbarrows of money and it was absolutely worthless. It's bound to happen again at some point very soon.
Certificates on a desert island, and they would be useless to you. What you would need would be food and animals and companions.
Even the sun's questioning it.
Money simply represents wealth in rather the same way that the menu represents the dinner. Only we are psychologically perverted in such a way that some of us would rather have money than real wealth.
I'm going to read this again because it's a great way of thinking about it. We are psychologically perverted in such a way that some of us would like to have rather than real wealth. That's you know, think about like everyone says like selling your soul and like making a deal with the devil, but like it's not even usually as deep as that. It's you sacrifice the morality you once had for the sake of material gain and you lose yourself in the process. You no longer have the same conviction that you once had because you have gone against what made you you and your shell of yourself.
But you know, you cannot drive in 5 cars at once, even though they be Cadillacs. You cannot live simultaneously in 6 houses or eat 12 roasts of beef at one meal. There is a limit to what one can consume.
I have a friend. I have a friend that certainly could do that. Anytime I go to all you can eat sushi with this guy, it is the most. It's honestly gross, but at the same time, it's actually impressive. Like this guy says he's full and then finishes off the rest of the food, so we have to pay like $3 extra. You know who you
So
are
that's
if you're here.
one of the
He's
sort of
not, but
confusions I'm talking about. Another is that we confuse ourselves as living organisms with our idea of ourselves.
and this is a very important idea. Think of in the spiritual spheres, it's just called ego. Is what most people will call it. Oh, your ego is this, but you're so much more. And really, what he's saying here is think of the person that defines themselves by what society tells them they are. You know, I have this job, I have this title, I am this tall, I have this girl. Like you define yourself by your accomplishments instead of who you actually are. I'm not saying it's bad to have things. I think it's bad when you start becoming attached to things and controlled by things and justifying the ends for the means, but that's a different argument. But you're so much more than whatever somebody could say about you. You're so much more than how anybody could categorize you, but we like to categorize ourselves. And it's in some way frustrating because, you're only limited by your imagination, and your imagination is only limited by your beliefs. If you don't believe me, look at Tesla. Tesla is the quintessential example of somebody that redefined even the way we see the world, the way we see the world as a material space where it's really not a material space. There's metaphysical principles operating at all points that we now define as normal physics. But before that, they didn't exist to the mind. And it's like there's so much more that we could be doing, but we're limiting ourselves and we're putting ourselves in this box and we're saying, well, I can't do this because of this. I can't do this because of this. And it's one of the most frustrating things to see because, I see it in myself. I see it in myself all the time. Like, I'll be working on something and I'll have a negative thought. I'm like, where is this coming from? What, why am I even doing this to myself? Like, what aspect of me is trying to bring myself down? Like, shouldn't I shoot for the stars? Shouldn't I find out I'm not good enough from the external world, not from myself? It's a very weird, like, complex. I don't know if that's just me that has this.
That is to say, with a conception of myself which is called the personality or ego. That is what we have been told we are. And it's an extremely crude and limited conception of oneself, of the actual unique living organism.
Like, think about it this way. Like, does your resume define your productivity in the workforce, for good or bad? Maybe you lied on your resume, but like, could it ever accurately describe all the effort you put in, or does it never kind of live up to what you actually did?
And we get unhappy because we're thinking of ourselves in this way, because we think, well, gee, I'm going to die. I once talked to a woman who came to me and said she was afraid of death. And we went into it in a long conversation. I said, what are you really afraid
Watch this before I know what he's gonna say.
of?
She's afraid
And
of
she
life.
thought it over and thought it over, and he said, do you know, what I'm going to be afraid of is what other people are going to say.
Oh, never mind. Wasn't as interesting as I thought it was. But this truly is it. Like, there's this stoic idea of everyone that you are afraid of how they will view you will one day die. All of your problems will one day be an afterthought, and yet you never had the courage to face these things. None of these things, in the grand scheme of the entire existence of the world, matter at all. But we're so petrified by them, and maybe that's an idea that's somewhat scary. But
They're going to say,
there's
poor
definitely
old Gert,
truth in
she
it.
couldn't last it through. Because you see, who you think you are is entirely dependent on who people have told you you are.
Who you think you are is entirely dependent on who people have told you you are. That is, it's a very powerful statement. And I think one of the saddest things, I don't know if this is for other people. I'm assuming it's for other people because it was for me as well. But like most of my life, I was trying to please people that one didn't like me and two I didn't like that much. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to impress the people in whatever group, in whatever clique, and you end up doing it, and they're not that good of a person. They're not a good friend. Like you debased yourself for nothing. It's like that Dostoevsky quote: "You sold your soul for absolutely nothing. That is your greatest sin." Or I flipped it around. It's your greatest sin is that you sold yourself for nothing. That is one of the most haunting quotes that's ever been said. But like, really, that has so much truth as into conformity. Like, there's such a fundamental aspect of life that is having the strength to go about it yourself, having the strength to go out about it alone, and understanding that whatever the crowd does, it's okay. They can do that. You don't have to do that as well. You can make your own decisions. You can be guided by your own path. You're not going to be happy following everyone else's destiny. You're only going to be happy following your own. And the saddest thing is like these collective ideas of things, they're just facades, they're just lies. Nobody actually fits that mold. Nobody actually fits that ideal. Nobody actually finds happiness through doing what the consensus tells you to do.
You're not that. Then another thing that bothers us is time.
I misquoted it. Your worst sin is that you have destroyed and betrayed yourself for nothing. There we go. I try to paraphrase stuff and I always like leave out a word or something. Whenever I try to paraphrase phrase Blake, that's the worst.
Most people nowadays say, I have no time. Of course you don't, because you are not aware of the present. You know, the present is represented on your watch by a hairline that is as thin as possible as is consistent with visibility. And so everybody thinks the present is, instead of, now, the present is the only real time. There is no past, and there isn't a future. And there never will be. We think ordinarily of the present.
So what he said there is very important. There's no past and there's no future. And obviously these things exist. Really what he's saying is that the past is the past and you can't change it. Yet so many people are living in the past. You know, one of the saddest things you'll ever see is like somebody trying to recapture their youth or somebody recapturing the way things were. Like, think about an athlete who's like past his prime or is retired and they keep talking about the glory days. They keep trying to bring the past into what is now, and you see they haven't grown at all. You've seen they haven't lived life at all. And I don't know, there's just it's kind of sad because like, you know, you're meant to experience things, you're meant to do things, you're meant to continue to grow. And if you peak at such a young age, I don't know, it'd be a hard thing to live with for me.
Present.
And the future is the same thing. The future is a projection of the past. So you experienced this heartbreak in the past, so you're closing yourself off to people in the future. Or, you know, you haven't been successful in the past, so you're projecting that into the future and you're expecting that you're going to get the same results. But the truth is that you control the present. So if you can control the now, then you can control the future. You can set aside everything that's happened to you. You can get over all of those pains, all of those heartaches, all of the things that affected you, and you can move forward into a new direction. You know, where you are right now, you have the freedom to direct yourself in any direction, and yet we stay stuck in the same one.
As an infinitesimal point at which the future changes into the past. And we also do a terrible thing. We imagine ourselves to be results of the past. And we're always passing the buck over our shoulders, like when God approached Adam in the Garden of Eden and said, "Hast thou eaten of the fruit of the tree whereof I told thee thou shouldst not eat?" And Adam said, "This woman thou gavest me, she tempted me, and I did eat." And God looked at Eve and said, "Hast thou eaten of the fruit of the tree whereof I told thee thou shouldst not eat?" And she said, "The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat." And God, out of the corner of his eye, looked at the serpent. The serpent said nothing.
I can't imagine like seeing one of these lectures live. I feel like it would have been so awesome. Like imagine, because I knew he would do college tours, so imagine just being like college and like you got to see Alan Watts. Like the people that always came to my school were like not impressive at all. Like they really weren't. It's really sad to say. Like I don't know why Purdue couldn't pull better entertainers, but
So you see, we're always passing the buck and don't realize that the past is caused by the present, as the wake of a ship flows back from the prow. Now, the wake doesn't drive the ship any more than the tail wags the dog.
So he said the past is caused by the present. And think of it in this way. How you view your past is based off of who you are right now. I think that's the way to think about it. So like if you're clinging on to the past, then that's an acceptance that you're not good with who you are. For good or bad. You're dwelling on negativity or you're dwelling on positivity. You're clinging for something that can't ever be recaptured. It's the Heraclitus. It's Heraclitus or Heraclitus. I don't know how to say it. You can never step in the same river twice, is his famous saying. Was I valedictorian? I was not. I am so bad in school because I can't pay attention for anything. Like the thing about me in school is like I'll pay attention if you're being interesting, but most people or most teachers, they I don't know, they don't really seem to have a true passion for teaching. They don't really seem to have a true desire to um, educate people. Because like to me, what a good teacher does is a good teacher makes the idea simple. But there's teachers that don't make the idea simple because they want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel smart for knowing things. And if you can't explain a complex idea to somebody that really has no right to understand it, then you're not doing a very good job. I was right the way I pronounced it the first time. What did I pronounce? Valedictorian? I took Latin. That's how I knew how to do it. I took Latin and forgot everything. I had a teacher that like I was like obsessed with Latin, and then I had a teacher that like would not write English characters. He wrote like he was from Russia and he had a very thick Russian accent. I couldn't understand a word he said. Very nice guy, but like he would write on the board and it was like the most insane thing I've ever seen. Teaching just a job for them. And there's the sad thing is there's a lot of teachers that love teaching. Oh, you're saying Heraclitus? Yeah, yeah, okay, okay. So I have been saying it right for years. Like I had a few teachers that like genuinely were really good teachers that like really cared about like showing somebody how to learn, showing somebody how to see something, and then it just clicking, and then they got the most satisfaction from it. Like I had a teacher. I think he's a professor now. I think he kind of got pissed off at the way that high school was taught, but I should reach out to him. He was an awesome guy. Tell him how I'm doing and stuff. That'd be cool. But he was like he worked for NASA. He worked like for a NASA contractor, and he quit that job and then went back to school just so he could go back to teaching because it was like you could tell like he definitely was interested in science, but he was more so interested in like curiosity and bringing curiosity out of people, and it was one of the coolest things. It's like I don't know if you guys were here when I was reacting to Professor Zhang. Like whatever you want to say about him, great teacher. You can tell. Like you can tell he cares about his students, and like that's the kind of teacher I wish we all had. But unfortunately, like Tech Light said, it's a job for a lot of people. But you have those few teachers that really resonated with you, that really clicked with you, and you think about them years later, even when you can't remember their name anymore. Like I have a teacher, I could see his face, and he was always nice to me, but I don't remember his name. And it's like the impact you have on people is so much greater than you could ever even imagine. But what I was saying about Heraclitus is you can never step in the same river twice. And really this idea is that there's like this fire to the world. There's this idea that there's some sort of entropy that things are always changing, that things are always being reborn. And the moment you step in the river, your next step, the river and you have both changed because you become older. That river, the sediment has moved down the river, and you can never bring back what once was. And the more you accept this idea, the more you are able to move forward. And the less you're able to accept this idea, the more you become stagnant.
But we've all got excuses. When my mother had a fit while she was carrying me in the womb, they didn't bring me up right. And then they go to the mother and say, how is it that you could have been so irresponsible with your children? And she says, well, it was my parents didn't bring me up right either. And so everybody passes the buck.
This is
But the truth of
this is like to me, this is the metaphysical idea of the resurrection or the crucifixion. Is that Jesus died for his sins. He died for our sins. You could also there's an analogy with Buddha too, and I'll explain that one as well. But um, you know, Jesus went on the cross, took the sins of the world, died and was reborn anew. And essentially that's what happens when you forgive somebody. You take the pain, the anguish, all of the heartbreak that that person put onto you, and you stop it with you. The buck stops with you. You don't push that onto somebody else. Like think about it this way, like I hurt you, you hurt somebody else, that person hurts somebody else, and it's just an infinite chain until somebody has the courage to stand up and forgive the world, forgive the endless cycle of pain, the endless cycle of heartbreak. It's the same thing with karma. Buddha said about karma is your actions ring into eternity, and everything that you do is going to be continued on for the rest of history unless somebody takes that karma and purifies it, unless somebody takes that pain and turns it into something good.
the matter is, it all begins here. This is where the creation begins. And you're doing it and won't admit it. Because, of course, you're all God in disguise. Jesus found that out, and they crucified.
Wait, he's not going to say it. Most people don't go that far to say that's what the crucifixion symbolizes, but I think that's really the most interesting aspect of Jesus is that he's purifying the world through him. And the original like Christian church was called the Way. It's the way because you're following him. You're following the ideal, you're following the image, and you're doing as he did. And to me, those ideas, like, there's something in them that's so appealing to me, and that's why I'll always call myself a Christian, but somewhat heretical in my other beliefs. But
Him for saying so. So this is a very odd thing for Westerners to understand, and particularly for Americans, because we are so fixated on the future.
think about like this idea today too of I have this goal in 5 years I'll be here. Like I don't think goals are a healthy thing to have because I think it's okay to have a general direction. I think it's okay to have an end state in mind, but when we worry so much about goals, then we fixate on that. And if you fixate on a goal, then all you're going to end up doing is realizing that you don't have it now. And I know the idea of creativity. The secret to creativity, I'll save you from buying every book on creativity right here. Listen to this. Imagine in your mind as if you've already done it. Make it feel so real. Give it all the senses of reality. Keep that image in your mind. Keep that idea in your mind. Keep that feeling in your mind. And then start working towards that idea without an association of how you're doing right now. Deny the facts of reality. Deny what is currently here and just imagine that you've already done it and allow your imagination to fill in the gaps. And if you really have fine-tuned your imagination well, it's completely possible. Um, there's various activities that you could do to strengthen your attention. My favorite one to get a better memory and to get a better attention is before you go to bed, remember your day in reverse order. I feel like we're getting off into a tangent somewhere, turn.
When we say we want to put something
I don't know. I could keep going. I don't know if any of this stuff's interesting. I want to say
down,
anything.
we
So
say it has no future. Well, do you? Much better to have a present. Because if you don't, it's useless to make plans. Because when they work out, you won't be there to enjoy them. You'll be thinking of something else. So we realize that we are living out of now and throwing the past behind us.
The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. There's a line in the Tao Te Ching. I'm going to mispronounce it. I'm going to misquote it, but I'm going to get the heart of it, so bear with me. But essentially, it is those who seek to find will never find because what you're looking for is already there. What that means is all striving in this world is simply the need for you to like yourself. I I hate how dumb it sounds, but think of it this way. You go out into the world and you achieve all these things, you do this, you do this, you do this, and what are you hoping to gain from it? What is your end state? And again, I'm talking about beyond the necessities. I'm talking about beyond your sustenance. I'm talking about like the need to go get a fancy car, the need to go have a super big house, or the need to do set things. Like, what is that for? That's so that the world and the people in it will tell you that you're good, so that one day you'll look in the mirror and you'll say, I like myself. It's the worst reaction and one of the most chilling things that you'll ever understand. But once you understand that you're completely free, you no longer need to look to the world for acceptance because you already have it. You already understand that I like myself, flaws and all. If you can say that about yourself and you can say that about yourself honestly, you are so much better off than 99.999% of people who have ever lived. Because that's why all wars are fought. That's why all, horrible crimes happen. That's why people rob. That's why people cheat. That's why people steal. It's all from the self. It's all finger pointing. It's all saying, well, I would be here if this person didn't do this to me. I would be here if this subset of people didn't do this to me. It's all the same cope and all the same solution. If you fix yourself, the world will fix itself around you. Is there anything else in this? No. This is after school, by the way. Um, we can listen to another one of these, or Hegel that I pulled up. I don't know how interesting this can be because this is a 43-minute video, so we won't get through all of it because that'll be like 43-minute video for me is like hours. And I was not planning on going for 4 hours, but we can either do this or we can do Alan Watts. But I'm so interested in Hegel. We're just gonna start with this and want to get into other stuff because how long have we been going for? An hour. So I'm still doing pretty good with my voice and I'm still having fun. So Hegel is super fascinating because nobody understands it. Hegel said something along the lines of there's not a single aphorism from Heraclitus that I have not adopted in my own teachings. So perhaps that's why he's so misunderstood. But really, what Hegel attempted to do was to build a system in a world of paradoxes, trying to ascribe some sort of working towards any sort of understanding about something that's so vast, that's something that's so individualistic and really to me at least my understanding of him is that he came up with a Hegelian dialectic which is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And this synthesis turns into a thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And it's just think of like technological singularity in the sense that like it just goes up and up and up. It's like the path of human progression is essentially what this video is going to be about. And really what I was saying is like you have one side, there's another side that springs up in opposition, and then somebody combines the two ideas and then creates a new idea, the new opposition. It's very interesting. That's every German philosopher and semanticist ever. I need a formal system in a world of paradoxes. I guess I didn't do a good job of explaining it because you could also say that's Immanuel Kant, that's Friedrich Nietzsche, that's Schopenhauer, that's Freud, that's Jung. I mean, you make a good point. I really just I said something so basic and I thought it was like I thought it explained anything. But the way the way he described the paradox of the world was the dialectic. That's the one thing we can get out of it.
Being given only one lecture to cover the philosophy of Hegel is a very difficult task. It's so huge, so comprehensive, so exhausting as simply to follow Hegel's lines of reasoning and to plow your way through Hegel's books makes it a kind of a difficult project. Woody Allen once said that he had gone to a speed reading class and he learned how to read War and Peace in 45 minutes. And when he was finished, he said it was about Russia.
That's funny until you remember who Woody Allen is and the weird guy he is. Silly. I mean, to a certain degree, they all are because the poets describe existence better than a philosopher could. I mean, you can find more about life in the Divine Comedy than you could find in any other work. And Joyce would argue that you can find more in Ulysses than you can find in any other work, but I can't understand it at all, so.
I have some of the same feelings about teaching you Hegel in the next 44 minutes. You're going to find that it's about the world. It's about history. It's about everything. And all philosophies are about everything, if they're any good at all, so it's not especially illuminating to find out that it's about the world, it's about what is, and stuff like that. So let me take as my point of departure the idea of spirit, in German Geist. It's central to Hegel's philosophy. It's central to his conception of reasoning, to his conception of history, to the big topics in Hegel's.
Although this guy's just pacing too. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, if I'm on the phone with you, I am pacing all over. So I definitely feel that.
Thinking. Now, Geist is translated in English as spirit. It's the part of the world, the part of that which isn't nature, which isn't matter, or isn't exclusively matter, isn't exclusively physical. It's the part of the world that isn't the tables and chairs, the animals and plants, simple, brute matter. Geist is exactly everything that isn't nature. Geist is mind.
What's the difference between the will to live and the will to power? It's like there's semantic differences, and I know there's an argument that they're very different, but like they come from the same kind of heart of things. I mean, what's the difference between the will to live or Freudian psychosexual development? Like one's based on the, you know what I mean? It's like they're kind of somewhat all derivative ideas of other derivative ideas of other derivative ideas.
German roots, and it has the same roots as two words that are in contemporary English. One is gist, as in the gist of an argument, the kind of logical center, the logical marrow of a series of thoughts. So somehow the essence, the logical essence of something, the gist of an argument, is connected to Hegel's idea of Geist, built into the idea. And a second word that we have in contemporary English, which is derived from the same root as the German word Geist, is geyser. The kind of natural phenomenon they have in Yellowstone Park. Every hour or so, Old Faithful, the geyser, shoots water under pressure out of the ground on a more or less regular schedule. The idea of a geyser, the idea of a natural
never thought he'd be talking about geysers in a Hegel lecture.
Natural upwelling is also implied in Hegel's idea of Geist, and the combination of logical essence or
What's this guy's
essentiality,
name?
logical,
I'm gonna look this guy up right now.
no, marrow of an
And his
argument.
lecture is so
In this
peak.
case, the logic.
Dude, like this is I feel like society's kind of regressed because like we don't have the benefit of technology, benefit of like the ability to like think. Because now every thought is directed by social media and algorithms and anything. And it's like I honestly think we're in like a dark ages. Like the difference in the difference in like the very intelligent people and the people that actually think about things, the people that actually evaluate things, and then the people that don't, I don't think has ever been greater. Like it's almost like we're entering like a new age of the Renaissance man or oh no, this guy died 2 years ago.
Logical marrow of human.
Emerson's self-reliance essay talks about this. Did you finish it yet? Dude, I'm rereading it right now and I'm like, I see why this was my favorite work for my favorite work right now is I want to say The Marriage of Heaven and Hell by William Blake, but it will certainly change to the Divine Comedy when I read all parts of it. Um, but yeah, Emerson's Self-Reliance is one of the greatest things ever written. And I mean, there's a reason why Nietzsche said that Emerson's the only great mind to come from America.
Human existence, of human being, the plan of all of human life, is what he's driving at with the idea of a Geist. Geist is spirit, Geist is soul, Geist is mind. But Geist, as Hegel uses it, does not specifically refer to the individual minds or psyches that you and I might have. I mean, that's part of it, but it's a great deal more than that. And in order to understand what more it could mean or what its significance is, we have to drop back a little bit to my lecture on Kant. I finished up Kant by talking about Kant's political philosophy. The reason I did that is because I wanted to discuss briefly the idea of subjectivity, the idea of personality, the idea of being an ego.
I need to read Kant as well. That's another name I have not studied yet. The thing is, like, I just don't want to read these people because I know, like, they're going to say things that I've already thought. And, like, a lot of these philosophers have influenced even subtly, like, other philosophers I've read. So it's like, I don't know if it's going to be talking about anything new. And a lot of like philosophy is just like stripped down, like, esoteric wisdom. And that's the other thing to it. It's like, it takes a very interesting metaphysical principle and applies it to the physical world and kind of makes it more boring. I'm reading a book by Gurdjieff right now. Um, what is it? Meetings with Remarkable Men. So good so far. I mean, actually, there's parts of it that are interesting. There's parts of it that are kind of low, but like every so often, I'm getting like a little crumb of something, and I'm like, there's something super fascinating there. It's really making me think. And Gurdjieff said something along the lines of like, scientific advancement and philosophical advancement and all the things that we think are advancement are just retooling of old ideas that we already understood and just applying them to a new context. So like this is not a well-known fact, but Isaac Newton was an alchemist. Okay, so let's think about Isaac Newton's laws of physics. You know, for every action, there's an equal to opposite reaction. Is that not just the Hermetic principle of as above, so below? You know what I mean? It's like the origin of these ideas aren't necessarily like they came from nowhere. The origins of these ideas are that like no, these are occult ideas that people are applying to the scientific world, and yet we dismiss the entire idea of spirit, and we've gone so much in this materialistic lens of things. We really need a new William Blake to be born because the only thing that's going to save us.
And Kant thinks, and this is very important for understanding Hegel, because he's in some respects the next generation of German idealism after Kant. Kant thinks that personality, that subjectivity, is not just a quality of this person and this person and this person. There are other subjects, other rational, free, moral agents that are not people. For example, God, the angels, or in the case of Kant, nations. Nations of free, rational.
So, like, again, you can see the inklings of Jung's idea of collective unconscious forces and metaphysical entity. Blake said something interesting about the Greek gods were once just the personification of forces until priests came along and made people worship them. And really what he's saying is that, an easy way to understand, the forces of nature is to give them a human characteristic and give them a human um, form that we can tell stories about, we can write fables about, and we understand the workings of it better. Very similar to how Aesop in his fables makes animals with specific characteristics act as certain characteristics of people so we learn lessons. It's the same kind of way of storytelling.
Moral agents. That's why the categorical imperative applies to them? I'll trust you on that. The categorical imperative does apply to all free rational agents, and Kant sees nations as being such rational agents. In other words, his idea of subjectivity, of personality, is not limited to the meat that individual human beings are. Hegel is going to take this idea of a collective subject, this idea of a personality that inheres in things larger and more complex than individual human beings. But he's going to go beyond Kant's idea that individual nations are rational, free, moral agents, that they have moral personality and moral responsibility. And instead, he's going to view the entire human species as being one enormous collective subject.
How is this not the will to live yet? Like, it's so funny how these ideas overlap so much because right now I'm just hearing Schopenhauer, or I'm hearing Jungian psychology or the will to power, like these ideas that seemingly kind of all come from the same source.
So in other words, the whole species of human beings, from the very beginning of human history and human existence, form a life history which is like the life history of an individual human being. It is analogous to that. What this means...
I don't know, he's not going to say it because this is like a lesser known thing, but Hegel ripped off Hermeticism and Kabbalah to make his system. That's where these ideas are coming from. He's stripping away the theology from these older ideas.
Means is that the phases of human history are analogized, and I think more than analogized, actually identified with the phases of development in an individual human being. So the human species...
This is why people like literature better. I think in certain ways, yes, in certain ways, no. Like literature can be far superior because, what's easier to understand? Jungian psychology or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? There's a lot of the same ideas there, but, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde put it in a timeless tale about the true nature of humanity and what happens when you fall victim to your darkness. But Jung, you got to read about like old alchemical symbols and Gnostic allegory and all sorts of mythological symbols in order to come to some sort of meaning that you'll get to the same place. So in a certain way, like literature can definitely explain ideas, but at the same time, like these systems have also inspired also literature from it. Like I don't know if you know who Hermann Hesse is, but if you read like Siddhartha, he's another book that's very famous, but he was very much inspired by Jung. So like these people then go to inspire the next generation. And Ayn Rand ripped off a lot of Nietzsche's writings and stuff. I don't know if you like her or not.
comes into existence.
Ayn Rand's interesting. Like I don't agree with her on a lot of things, but like she's interesting. Like that's the thing with me. Like you could say whatever the hell you want, just entertain me. I'm there for it. Like you can lie to me, you can try to go over on me, but I'm gonna get information from you, and I just want to hear something different. I want to hear something I haven't heard before.
In a kind of infancy, ignorance, uh, superstition, and an inadequate understanding of its own qualities, of its own capacities, and of its own potentials. In other words, primitive human beings didn't understand the nature of the entire human project, of all of human existence, for the same reason that 5- and 6-year-olds don't understand what it's like to be an adult, because they lack the appropriate experience.
Dude, Anthem was I don't know if you read Anthem. It's like 80 pages. Dude, it's one of the best like dystopian books I've ever read. Because it's against collectivism, and she uses a Promethean myth, and I'm like, this had everything I wanted in it. It was like perfect. It was short, sweet, and had a very interesting point to take away from it. Then she goes too far into like there's no such thing as like a free market. Like there's always going to be interests that control it. Like you can't get away from institutional powers. Like unless you go back to a agrarian or city state like kind of control system. But even then people are going to centralize.
And they lack the appropriate development and knowledge that comes from experiencing the world. Hegel holds the view that all human beings taken together on a global, universal scale, and this emphasis on the global, the universal, is very much a part of German idealism. You hear resonances of Kant in many parts of Hegel. Hegel thinks that all human beings form one giant collective subject, and that means that we can go back and look at the actual phases of human history as the kind of life story of this giant subject. And he thinks that it is possible not only to look back on these phases of development, but actually discern the process of maturation.
So this is where the dialectic comes in. This is where the thing that I said earlier about thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This synthesis becomes a new thesis, then so on and so on and so on until consciousness elevates to the point where this is no longer necessary. Again, it's very much reminiscent of the technological singularity, which is an idea I'm sure everyone is hearing more and more. If you don't know what that is, easiest way to think about it is technology is progressing at a certain rate. There's different ways in which to measure that. You can talk about the amount of data, the amount of information shared, the amount of memory. Like there's a million ways to measure it, but essentially it's at a graph like this. But eventually it's going to hit a point where it's instantaneous. And once technology increases at an instantaneous rate, anything's possible. And that's really what Hegel's saying here as well, is that we will reach a point of consciousness where there is no need for any of these ideas anymore. It's a very interesting idea, but how practical it is.
Process
I
of
don't know if he took it that far though, but that's really the end. That's what you see with like these like accelerationists or like these transhumanist types. Like these are types of ideas that they love to believe in. Is that we're gonna hit a point where we no longer need to be humans anymore. It's a very such a dumb.
development, the process by which this giant subject, this ultimate subject, realizes the potentials that were in it from the very beginning. In some way, this is a kind of, I mean, it's an analogy, but it has a certain plausibility to it. There is something buried deep within children that allows them to eventually become scientists or mathematicians or whatever. They have some sort of potential for logical analysis, for the comprehensive articulation of their experiences, and they also have the ability to learn from their experiences what they are.
I see why Schopenhauer hated him now because Schopenhauer believed that like most people will never progress and that there's not really such thing as progression for humanity, that most of life is suffering. So Hegel has somewhat of a positive outlook. That's what it seems like to me, but I have to go back and read his criticisms.
Are and what the world around them is. And that, according to Hegel, is what the career of all of human history amounts to. So we could say, when you stop and think about it, that Geist is the soul of all of humanity. It's the soul of the human race. It's the part of all of human beings which is
The collective memory or the collective experience or the collective unconscious, that sort of idea of things.
not material, which is intellectual, which is rational, which is somehow metaphysical. Okay, so he is a metaphysical thinker, very much in the German tradition, but in addition to that, he's going for much bigger game. He is trying to do what may well be impossible. He's certainly the last philosopher to attempt this project. The project that Hegel has is to present a comprehensive interpretation of human existence. It's an attempt to say, this is what human beings are, this is what their whole career amounts to, and by implication, he hopes to kind of plot the trajectory of human history and of human life. And
That's why Schopenhauer hates him, because Schopenhauer didn't believe there was progress. He just believed that there was.
find out also where human existence is going. He honestly thinks and seriously believes that it is possible to discern the ultimate goal of human existence. He believes that it is possible to rationally find out what the goal of humanity is, what the point of human existence is. And he's certainly the last of the great philosophers to attempt such an perhaps impossible task.
This is like this is just so funny because there's like so many hoops to jump through. Like you devote your whole life to finding meaning. Like it's like the Neil deGrasse Tyson mindset of like I don't know if he's an atheist or not, but like to me, his entire existence seems to be like if we answer scientific questions, then I will finally have a purpose and I will finally understand why I'm here. It's like it's like a completely backwards way of looking at things. Like, think about it this way, like the best moments in your life are the moments you're not thinking. It's the moments you're present. It's the moments that everything else fades to the background. Your responsibilities are no longer bothering you. The things that you have to do tomorrow are not stressing you out. You're not worrying about what you said, an hour ago. You're not worrying about what you're going to say. You're just there. You're existing. You're living, and you're enjoying the moment. That's the purpose, to find that little bit, that little moment in each day that you can experience. That's what's meaningful. Everything else is just fluff. Everything else you don't need. That is the core existence. That is what we've gone away from. And it's so funny that Hegel builds this intensive system to try to understand purpose, but misses the bigger picture.
Now, we found when we studied Kant that in some respects, Kantian moral theory is a way of taking the biblical moral theories, the idea that we ought to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, of taking the golden rule, of taking essentially Christian ethics, and putting it in a kind of formulation which allows it to be intellectually respectable in the age of idealistic philosophical systems. In other words, Kant takes Christian morality and provides a justification for it which is independent of Scripture, but which is viewed as being essentially complementary to Scripture.
Taking away the necessity for morality from God. And that's a very interesting idea because I want you to think about it this way. Like, do you respect somebody that does charity for the way that it makes them appear? Or do you respect somebody that does charity because they actually believe in the cause? They give more than they really can afford to give. They do it because they know someone's less fortunate than them. They're doing it because they're benevolent, not because of the status or the pressure or, the tax write-off. Essentially that's what Khan is saying. It's like, doesn't make you a good Christian to follow all the rules because you're afraid of hell. It makes you a good Christian to follow all the rules because in your heart, it's right. And essentially his task was to divorce those two ideas so that I don't know if it was for the sake of himself or for the sake of society, but it's a very interesting proposition. And it's one that, I mean, very, when you break down these arguments, like they're very difficult to start breaking down. And I need to read more of Kant. These ideas are interesting. I've heard the main point of his writing, but I haven't gone into the details about it yet.
There's no conflict between Scripture properly understood through right reason and the results that we get when we apply reasoning to questions like the categorical imperative, the questions of universal morality and universal ethical judgment. Well, Hegel is going to do something analogous. Hegel wishes to take not...
You ever watch like debates online? I don't know why I click on them, but every time I see a debate online pop up and it's always like a Christian versus an atheist, and the gotcha for the atheist is always, well, where do you get your morality from? And they fumble and they say consensus and they say other sorts of things, and the Christian can just point to the Bible, so it's very easy to point to where you get your morality from, but it's much more difficult to bring it from, your own experience.
not Christian ethics, but Christian eschatology. The idea that
You
there
don't
will be
watch
an
them
end.
anymore? Dude, it's so bad though. I don't watch the full thing. I'll just watch a few minutes and I'm like, why did I click on this? Like it's the most nonsense arguments always. And they get so many views. It's like, because I fundamentally don't believe in debate at all. I don't think like, I think you could debate your friend, but I don't think you could debate somebody that's just trying to improve their social standing, improve the amount of eyeballs on them because they're going to do whatever dirty trick and they're not going to take you at your word and it's going to become a shouting match. And even if you make a good point, they're not going to be able to admit it because they're seeing the world in a completely different lens and you're seeing the world in a completely different lens, so you can't understand their point. And like, I don't think there's any understanding that's actually going to come from it. I mean, I think the only understanding you can have about somebody is if you try to put yourself in their shoes. But even that, it's always going to fall short. It's always going to not get the full picture.
End of the world, that the end of the world is part of God's universal plan for all human beings, and essentially dip it into the vocabulary and into the patterns of thought characteristic of German idealism. So where Kant takes Christian morals and gives it a logical foundation, a logical connection to the trends of Enlightenment thought, what Hegel does is take the idea of an end of the world, of a millennial change in the human condition, where there'll be a reconciliation between God and man. Those of you who are familiar with the New Testament will know that the book of Revelation, the last book of the New Testament, details the end of the world. God is going to cash in everybody's chips.
It's not really what it is. It's about Rome. I mean, you could either take a literal interpretation of the metaphysical. I usually like to take the metaphysical of the Bible, but I think too many people are obsessed with Revelation and not obsessed with the rest of the Bible. The funniest thing ever is like Peter Thiel going on lecture tours about Revelation. It's like clear he doesn't know anything about Revelation. Like I don't even want to look at it. I don't even want to watch the video because I know it's just gonna be like, what is this guy on about? It's we live in weird times, man. We live in times where people are trying to replicate the end times of the Bible. It's almost like they're like, "Oh, this is cool. We can use the Bible to carry out our evil plans."
At some point and say, enough is enough. Finally, I'm going to end this progress from the earliest condition of human beings in the Garden of Eden or moving up the ladder of evolution or wherever they stem from. And he is actually going to finish this project. What it means is a couple of things. First of all, there exists a God who has a providential plan for all of human beings. What's the phrase? Not a sparrow falls, but not God knows about it. Well, there's something like that built into the Hegelian philosophy of history. Hegel believes that he can seriously tell us what the ultimate purpose of human history is.
This is so fun. When he says it like that, it sounds extremely like dumb. Sure, like there's very valid arguments, and I see where it comes from, but it's so funny to think about it this way that this great philosopher's entire idea is that he can predict what God wants. Like this sounds like a church, not like a philosophy.
He can tell us what the whole goal of all of human existence is and what all of human history drives towards. Now that's a big intellectual project. I think most people would hold that he was unsuccessful in doing that. I think that's a fairly reasonable assessment. But in part, it's just the grandeur and the enormous aspiration of this attempt, which at least immediately should involve our attention. Now, what Hegel wants to do is go back and look at all the history he can have access to, and that's not very much. Even though Germany put together a very remarkable historical culture in the 19th century, the amount of actual historical data that Hegel has to work with is not very good, not very...
The thing about history too is like how much of is it real? How much of it is like one of the scariest things that I ever read was Gustav Le Bon's The Crowd, because it's all about group psychology, crowd psychology. And one thing he says is that crowds are extremely acceptable to ideas that seem insane. You know, have you ever heard a battle where, you know, there wasn't an invulnerable knight that couldn't be harmed by any armor or any sword or any like, you know what I mean? Like legends are born from crowds witnessing great events and the story spreading and becoming mythic and you know, we hear about Achilles, and Achilles was probably a real person, but he was somewhat of a god and invulnerable. Like, how much of this is real and how much of this is fiction and, you know, the whims of a crowd? And how much can this be manipulated over centuries and lost generations? And, you know, there was a large part of history where everything was oral, everything was passed down through spoken words. And every time I tell a story, it gets better. Like every time you tell a story, you know what detail that people liked, you know what detail to leave out. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a big game of telephone, and how much of this stuff is real and how much of it is seemingly just um fabricated. There's this like you'll see it if you study secret societies and different secret societies across different cultures. They all have an Atlantis myth. They all claim to be the descendants of the Atlanteans, like Rosicrucians, Freemasons, Knights Templar, trying to think of the other ones, the Assassins, the Illuminati. Like they're all Atlantis myths. They all reskin it in a different way. Even the Hebrew Israelites, they have an Atlantean myth where they were from Kemet, and Kemet's the real Atlantis, and all sorts of stuff. It's really hilarious when you start breaking down these like ideas in history that repeat time and time again. The same thing with the flood myth. The flood myth is weird though because you hear it more and more now. I feel like that's the new like that's if there's a end of the world scenario, it's going to be a flood. I promise you that. It's not going to be nuclear war.
very accurate, not very comprehensive, and thus his history itself suffers from certain defects with regard to that. But he does think that he sees the broad general outlines in the progress of human beings. Progress is central to Hegel's conception of history, and his conception of history is central to his conception of philosophy. What he adds to the rationalism and idealism of the German Enlightenment is the idea of history. He has freedom and rationality existing in space and time. He brings down the world of metaphysics, in other words, and puts it here in the realm of physics. It's not that there aren't two worlds, a metaphysical and a physical realm, it's just they seem to beautifully overlap. There's a sort of pantheism in Hegel, which you also see in Tolstoy, for those of you who know Tolstoy's novels.
I really need to read Tolstoy. I've been hearing that name so much. Like I've heard that name like 4 or 5 times today in separate contexts in separate ways. Very weird.
Where there's a vast kind of oceanic feeling that you get, and you come away with the feeling, if you read War and Peace, that God is really running everything and that we're all just atoms in this vast flux, this vast pattern, put together according to some rules that we ourselves are incapable of completely discerning. Well, Hegel kind of holds that view, except that he believes that he is completely able to discern these, which is, again, perhaps the vanity of the philosopher.
This is the dryness he said that would got me. This is so funny the way he said it.
but give him credit just for the project that he attempts. Now, when we're dealing with Hegel's philosophy of history, what we're going to be dealing with is the Geist, the human soul, the human
You
spirit.
really like
How did it
Tolstoy?
get
What
to
should I
be?
read first? I think I have Anna Karenina. I can't remember what it's called. I have that one, and it's like a bunch of his short stories. Because I got that one just because, like, to me, it's not that I can't read long books. It's just I don't like to do it because I like to read different books at different times. So, like, if I'm in the mood for a certain kind of book, I can, finish it in a few days. But if I'm not, it'll be hard for me. And I like to read all different sorts of things depending on the day. So I got the short stories just so, like, I'm like, okay, I like this author when I read it because I know I'm gonna like him, but it's just like I need to like in my mind like have the like I love this one, so I'm gonna love this one. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's too much right off the bat. Yeah. Yeah, like I know I'm gonna love it. I really do. Like I can tell you I will very much enjoy it. It's just looking at it, you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of another long book I read recently, but it's like looking at Ulysses. Like it's just like, do I really want to spend the time that it would take me to get a good understanding of this book, or do I want to read like 50 books instead? But to me, I'm starting to get to the point where I've read enough books that like I don't need to read like an average book. I want to read the greats. I want to read the ones that make you see the world in a whole new way, make you experience things and change the way in which you perceive things. Like that's what I'm interested in now. I'm not interested in like picking up like the book of the week. I want to get to the root of things. I want to get to the cause of things. That's why I love the Divine Comedy so much because I just you read the Divine Comedy, you're like, this is really doesn't get much better than this. I mean, maybe in certain contexts, I like Blake more because of his language is more mythic, where Dante's is more refined. But like, it's just apples and oranges at that point. It's like, what do I want more? It's not neurotic like Dostoevsky. I love Dostoevsky though. He is he like he's one of those people that like is on the borderline of insanity with insanity, and there's something genius about that. Like you need to be somewhat crazy and not fit in order to have some sort of genius. Like I mean, think about Da Vinci. Da Vinci was kind of a weirdo. He would go to the graveyard and dig up bodies and dissect them just so his art could be better and so he could have a better understanding of anatomy. It's like that's a level of commitment I don't have, but that's what it takes to be that kind of person. And Dostoevsky is so funny because he reminds me of my friend because my friend it's the same friend that likes the sushi, but you know, when he didn't have a lot of money, he went online and started gambling and he won like a few grand and immediately spent it all. And meanwhile, the guy had like bills to pay, and it's just like it reminds me of Dostoevsky because there's that story of he had to put himself on death ground. He had to put his back against the wall, so he would go to the casino and gamble all the money that he made, so that he could um like put his back against the wall and give himself a deadline and force himself to write to the best of his abilities. It's so funny.
Be the way that it is? And how is it that we can
Yeah,
account
no,
for the
it's
fact
I know what you mean. I know what you meant though. I knew you like I don't know how objectively you could say Dostoevsky's a bad writer. Like I genuinely like maybe you could say you enjoy him, but like you can't say he's a bad writer. Like I've never met anybody spent it back on betting sites. No, he didn't spend it back on betting sites. It was even worse. He like bought like really expensive shoes. And he has like wide feet too, so like he ruined them instantly because like it's like you know how the shoe's like supposed to come up like this? Well, it like came out like this because his feet were so wide. It was just the funniest thing ever.
Fact that the Geist used to be different, that human self-consciousness, that human society, that human culture, all of which are expressions of the Geist, incidentally, that it develops and that it changes. How is it that something perfect, ultimately rational, ultimately real, with a capital R, the German philosophers are famous for capitalizing their nouns to make them abstractions. It doesn't actually happen in the German language. All German nouns get capitalized, but in order to get the sense of how they're using words in unusual and unfamiliar ways, we usually capitalize Hegelian rationality, Geist, and things like that. Well, this special use of the Geist.
Dude, my friend is a character. Like I wish I like could think of more stories offhand that like he would tell me that would just like dumbfound you because like he's one of those people that like doesn't make sense. You know how like Jerry had Kramer? Like he's my Kramer. Like he's that guy that like shouldn't exist but does and thrives and you're just like it wouldn't work if I tried it, but it works for you. So keep doing it. I'm not gonna fault you.
Demands in a way that we inquire how the Geist could have come to have the properties that it does, and how it is that it's changed over time, and are there laws by which we can describe and then implicitly predict the future development of human history? And Hegel thinks that we can. According to Hegel's understanding of human history and human spirit, each time, each epoch, each historical moment has its own Geist, has its own level of maturity. And each great historical epoch makes a contribution to the development of this overall human spirit. It's something analogous to, I don't know if you know Ralph Waldo Emerson, the idea of an oversoul, right, that connects us all. Well, the oversoul has been developing over time. Emerson was a great fan of German idealism.
That's interesting. I didn't know that connection. I love how he says, I don't know if you know Ralph Waldo Emerson, like only the greatest philosopher ever, or at least my favorite. But I see what he's saying, like Hegel believes that each moment there's a certain thing that defines it. So you think about like the medieval times, like the Crusades and is that the medieval times? I'm so bad with history. But like the sort of collective ideals, like the age of Pisces was the age where Christianity thrived, and we're moving into the age of Aquarius, where you can see there's a big upheaval in sort of the collective ideas of things, and like that's sort of what he's lending to. And I certainly see that you could break down certain periods in history to certain beliefs. Like think about the development of writing styles, like you have the Enlightenment authors, and then you have the Romantic authors who are a response to the materialistic, science focused way of seeing the world. And you have the likes of William Blake and Lord Byron and Wordsworth.
And the Geist, the spirit, has been developing over time, and it hasn't been developing in a haphazard fashion.
Yeah, he
It's
was.
been developing according to its own necessary laws, and these laws are the laws of rationality and freedom. One thing you'll want to note when you study German philosophy, particularly German idealism, is that all the German metaphysicians, Kant as well as Hegel, connect the idea of freedom and rationality. Freedom and rationality are always closely bound up. Now, the Geist is the essence of human existence. It's the part of human beings that isn't meat, that isn't the corpse that we carry around with us. It's our spirit, our soul. And each historical epoch has a different spirit or soul, and that spirit is expressed in the characteristic cultural productions of that time. Now, this is not so far-fetched.
Again, these are all very interesting ideas. Think about like, an easy thing to think about is like movies from the 90s or movies from the 80s or from the 60s. Like there's certain ideas that define an era that all you need to do is consume that media and you know exactly a lot of the sort of beliefs that were held. And it's an idea that you can see very easily if you think about it in that way.
Most of us can see some sort of connection between the Renaissance humanism of, say, Machiavelli's political theory and the development of, say, Renaissance humanism in the arts. For example, the development of perspective in visual art is something we don't see in the visual art of the Middle Ages. Well, this emphasis on humanism is something that carries over into the various products of the Renaissance, and you can see a consistent sort of spirit of the times in the characteristic cultural products. Think of the Enlightenment.
What do you think will be said about our modern culture? Don't look it up because it's one of the worst songs I ever heard, but like I'm sure this is some sort of promotional like thing that they put out and meant to garner eyeballs and get people talking about it, but like they showed a clip of like Sexy Red um remixing a Michael Jackson song, and like the CIA should just retire from like trying to destroy the black community because they did it with that that song alone. That's They don't need to sell crack anymore. They can just release that song. They did it. But like the art now is just so bad. Think of the movies that come out. Think of the songs that are popular. Think of the things that people are inspired by. It's so like mass produced, so corporate, so conformist, so boring, so postmodernist. There's nothing to it. There's no depth to it. There's no heart to it. It's a very depressing age when you think about it. I think this is why we see like such a resurgence of reading and such a resurgence of people reading the classics again and people exploring these older ideas because they're fed up with the ideas that exist now.
The typical philosophers of the Enlightenment are the German rationalists or the French rationalists and the English empiricists. Both of these have a kind of scientific orientation to the world that brings them into line with with the developments in physical science that are being made in roughly the same time. And then if we look at the art that's characteristic of the Enlightenment, if you know the Bach's Brandenburg concertos, it's like walking into a giant clockwork. We're walking into the Newtonian universe when we hear the Brandenburgs. So the idea of a spirit of the time, however nebulous and amorphous, has a certain plausibility to those of us who can kind of make these kind of broad generalizations. And up to a point, you see it or you don't. But I think most persons can get a sense that common intellectual concerns, common intellectual questions interact with each other and influence each other in the same concrete historical moments. So we have
Another easy one to see now is like politics, like this side, they shout at each other, and there's some force back and forth that's going to eventually create something down the middle, whether it's the left or the right that moves to the center, and then it's going to become here and here. Like it's just simple evolution of ideas and how things kind of sit with the collective sort of acceptance of what's right.
have these abstract ideas of moving our intellectual orientation, say, from God to nature, which is characteristic of the
There's
Enlightenment.
that dumb
Well,
term
you
everyone
can see
says,
those
the
concerns
Overton
not just
window. Think about how it moves and shifts. That's a sort of good way of. I hate people that say that shit. That's so stupid. It's like just say whatever the fuck you want. Don't talk about what's acceptable. Don't talk about what you can and can't say because that's the exact reason why we're in the situation we're in. It's because everyone's afraid to fucking tell the truth. Something's not right. Tell the fucking truth about it. It's that easy.
just in physical science, but also in political science,
Who
in
am I
moral
yelling at?
theory, and also in visual art, in music, in all the cultural products. And the cultural products of our society are the expressions of its spirit. We often, in kind of everyday terms, talk about things that are consistent with the spirit of the times and inconsistent, that seem out of step with the times. Well, what we're really saying there is that it doesn't seem consistent with the general trend of the culture and its orientation. It's not so far-fetched. Hegel takes it a long way, but this is basically what he's talking about. Now, the idea of a spirit of the...
And that's definitely where Schopenhauer hates Hegel, because he thinks he's too idealistic in this way. But I think if Schopenhauer took it in a little bit of a less extreme way, maybe he would be more on board with it. Maybe not though, because he was the biggest pessimist ever. What do you think is the truth about society today? I don't think it matters. That's the truth. I think if you participate, then you're complicit. but if you don't participate, then you're not. Because like to be in opposition to one side is to strengthen that side. So like if you don't like what's happening today, don't participate. And I think that's the only way to go about it. Like, I mean, you can always do this moral relativism is like, well, we're not as bad as that group. We're not like this, but like if you're committing crimes, I'm not on board with you. If you're doing things that are not moral, I'm not on board with you. And to me, the ends never justify the means. So to me, my way of looking at the world is never be going to be congruent with a belief system or a doctrinal system or a us versus them mentality. You know, if you have to point the finger, then it means you're not looking towards yourself first. You know, as Jesus said, "He who hath no sin cast the first stone." I mean, I don't want to quote scripture, but I think it's the easiest way to explain these ideas. I think just by participating, you become complicit. I don't know. I have trouble like explaining this to people, but like I don't really like existing in the worldly sense of things. Like to me, I'm inspired by ideas. I'm inspired by thoughts. I'm inspired by art and things like that. I don't need to partake in social media. I don't need to partake in, you know, current events or anything that is finite. I want to deal with the infinite. You know, what's more important, the news or my soul? You know what I mean? No, you're fine asking. I'm completely okay with you asking, man. That's just like that's an opinion I hold that's not very popular, if that makes sense. That's why I'm trying so hard to justify it. Because it's just something that like I've you know, the more you try to argue, the more you try to explain to someone how their ideology is wrong, the more you're going to alienate that person. And truly what needs to happen is the world needs to come together. You know, the powers that be are a very limited amount of people. They don't really have the power that they appear to. And if people would just stop participating for 1 minute, you know, look up, you know, realize that this is something Charles, I think his name is Charles Carroll. I think that's his name. But he said something that really like hits the point clear. So I hope that's his name. But he said if you stab another inmate in jail, all you get is more time. And that's really all this like political bickering is, and that's really all these endless wars are, and that's really all participate. Like, why do I have to have a take on every war? Why do I have to have a take on every political thing? It doesn't make. I'm not running for office. I don't care. Maybe if it affects me, maybe if it's like directly in my face, I can say something. But like, doesn't bother me. I don't. Charles Kelly, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was like one of the best ways I've ever. I only know him from his streams though. I didn't even know he was from MDE. Dude, he has such a weird way of looking at the world, and it's like so refreshing because you've never heard the take. Like he is into some interesting ideas.
The times means that there's one spirit that all of these kind of coalesce into. And what that is the universal mind of humanity, the soul of humanity. And it turns out that the soul of humanity, that the spirit, is becoming progressively more knowledgeable, both about the world around it and about itself. As spirit, which is the kind of general, collective, universal human soul, becomes more conscious of itself, it becomes more conscious of its essential characteristics. And the essential characteristics of spirit are that it's not nature. In other words, that it's free and that it has the potential for autonomous rationality. Again, this harks back to
Again, there's these like I still see the similarities with like Schopenhauer's idea of things. Maybe this is why Schopenhauer hated it so much, is because there were some similarities but very stark differences. Where Hegel's is a progression, where Schopenhauer's is kind of a trap. It's kind of a hamster wheel that you can't get off of
Kant's
unless
conception
you become an
of the distinction
ascetic.
between nature and mind, or phenomena and noumena. Well, Hegel is going to connect these over, have phenomena and noumena in some respects overlap, but hold on to certain metaphysical tinges here. In other words, he wants to have it all. He wants an entirely this worldly, historically comprehensive treatment of human existence, and he wants to have God, freedom, spirit, rationality with a capital R, continental sense of the term. So he wants it all. Now, spirit, in developing its consciousness, in becoming more conscious of itself, learns essentially modern Newtonian physics. It learns how to push nature around, which is what physics is. You apply it to your physical knowledge of the world, and what you get is technology, the ability to push nature in.
I think I'm gonna end this now because I feel like my voice is it's kind of going, and I wanna not that I want stuff done. It's just like there's some things I want to take care of. But yeah, pretty good stream. Thank you guys for being here. Um, I made a post about this the other day, but I'm gonna start doing a pseudo book club where I'll assign some reading and then I'll do a members only stream at some point during the week. Right now it's on Sundays. Might change if my schedule changes or if I have to make some adaptations, but that's tentatively where it's going to be. Not sure what time it's going to be yet. I'm still putting all the details together and the presentation I'm going to make and that sort of stuff. So if that's interesting to you, become a channel member. The directions will be on the channel page. You can't access channel memberships. It's also in my school community where I put all my writings and everything that I'm thinking about on a daily basis. So I'll do that because I know somebody said that they can't access memberships in their country. But yeah, pretty good stream. Have a good rest of your Friday night, guys, and I don't know, have a good Valentine's Day too. Hopefully you don't spend too much money. Enjoy the stream. Thanks. Thanks for being here, Joff. Jeff or Joff Burrows. I'm sorry. I was like, I'm like, I saw the G and I'm like, I'm gonna say it wrong, but yeah, thank you guys for being here. I will catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully I will stream again before, but I stream every Wednesday, Friday, so I'll catch you guys then if I don't make time in the meantime. But peace out. Good rest of your night, guys. Thank you for being here. It was a good time.